And we are live. Welcome, everyone, to a new episode of Potzblitz, the weekly lightning talk. This is episode number 3 with André Neves and Christian Moss from Zebedee. And we're going to talk about the Lightning Network and gaming in particular. Our co-host today is the legendary Theo Goodman.
Hey.
The meme master himself. And before we jump right into it, just a few technicalities. We are using Jitsi to stream this meetup, if you will. It's an open source video conferencing software, and it usually works, but it doesn't save your data. So give it a try. There's lots of free instances out there, and also one on meet.fulmo.org. If you do have any questions during the live stream, put them in the chat on YouTube, post them on Twitter using the hashtag Potzblitz, or come to our MetaMost server. It's mm.fulmo.org, and the channel is Potzblitz, where you can ask questions to Christian and André. And last but not least, since this is on YouTube, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you like what we're doing, so we can have some more of these little chats. And yeah, without much further ado, I present to you André Neves and Christian Moss. They're going to talk about Zebedee, Mintgox, the Lightning SDK, and just general gaming in Lightning, and they're going to blow your mind. It's your screen.
Hey, nice to be here. Thanks for having us on.
You're muted, Andre. Welcome. We're going live, but you're muted.
Oh, yeah.
Great. There we go. Sorry about that. Jitsi has a funky interface. Let me share my screen and get things started. Jeff, thanks for having us. For those that don't know me, my name is André Neves. I'm the CTO of Zebedee. Alongside me is Christian Moss. He's our head of game development, really the brains behind all of the cool things that Zebedee's been putting out. I believe I'm sharing screen now. So great. Can you guys just let me know if this is all good on your side?
Looking good. Go for it, man.
Great. Awesome. Thanks. So Zebedee is a Lightning Bitcoin startup. We are working towards facilitating the integration of Bitcoin into games. We believe Bitcoin in the gaming environment is just prone for it. It's already digital. It's already a software nascent and software native audience of users and players. And we believe that the recent advancements of the Lightning Network truly provide for a great user experience while using Bitcoin in your games. And so I just wanted to preface it. There's quite a bit of talk relating to how to say the pronunciation of Zebedee, and it really is a British word. It's Zebedee. I know you mentioned in your last talk, Jeff, and I thought it was an interesting bit, so I wanted to attest to it. It's Zebedee, and that's intonation there. But second, I wanted to preface it by saying, who is Zebedee and what is Zebedee? There's a lot of talk on Twitter, and you may know our logo or some of the things we put out, but you may not know what we're all about and what we're actually trying to achieve. So Zebedee is building in a lot of verticals and a lot of fronts, but really trying to bridge the gaming industry with the Bitcoin industry, if you will, really utilize of Bitcoin's capabilities in a gaming environment. So on one side, we're targeting game developers, right? And by that, I mean, we're working to create extremely easy to use APIs, tight integrations through SDKs to your preferred game development environment, whether it's Unity or whether it's Unreal Engine or whether it's Godot, or even on a more web-facing environment with something like Node.js or Python. The goal is really to have a breadth of SDKs and APIs that provide the ability for game developers to sort of forget about the friction and forget about the complex tasks that come with necessarily having to run many nodes and all the things I'm going to talk about, but really focus on building the games and introducing new types of user interactions through the use of Satoshis and Bitcoin. So that's on the game development side. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. In the middle here, mobile wallets is relating to the player side, right? We are trying to onboard lots and lots of users and players into a world of Bitcoin, and primarily from our side into a Lightning first world of Bitcoin. And so we need to provide the tools with the user experience, the ease of use, the familiarity that users of outside of the Bitcoin industry would expect from that. And third, we're actually building a lot of our games ourselves. You can get some of that, more details on that through Christian. He's going to give some demos and talk a little bit more about it. But the idea is to utilize our services and our platform and our tools to showcase to game developers what is possible with Satoshis inside of games, as well as what types of interactions can be created. And then who is Zebedee, right, now that we know it? So Zebedee we're now a 7-person team and hopefully growing over the next couple months. Simon is our CEO. He's more geared towards the financial markets, has been in the crypto industry since 2014, and previously was at corporate strategy at Bitstamp. I myself come from more of a applications development, systems development background. Design studio called Big Human in New York City was my last gig, and really the things that bridge me into Bitcoin and specifically Lightning are I was in the first cohort of the Chain Code Lightning Network residency in 2018. I worked alongside the great Lightning Koala to work on the Lightning Chess project early on in 2019. And so I've been around the space. I'm one of the co-organizers of the New York City Bit Devs alongside Jay and John, who are great guys as well. And so really bridging into Bitcoin has been a great thing for me. And without trying to put too many words in Christian's mouth, he's going to talk about himself a little bit too. He is what I would call the epitome of a game developer that loves Bitcoin and just wants to merge the two. He's been working on Bitcoin and games since 2014. I know he's going to mention some of the titles that he used to put out then and are reviving now through Lightning. He most recently was the 2019 Lightning Network game hackathon winner. And we had lots of plans for Bitcoin 2020, but we will touch on that in a little bit. So I did want to show a little video that I think would show, we built it with the intention to showcase and sort of bring the ideology of Zebedee and the mission that we have into perspective in a very easy to digest manner. So I'm going to play it here for a second.
Here's a problem we've all had at games. You beat the big boss, get some sweet game points, and even share them with your friends. All good, right? Except the points are worthless, your friends don't want them, and you can't send them outside the game. Welcome to the extremely underdeveloped world of value transfer in gaming. Used to be that devs didn't really have a choice. The in-game currency may be worthless, but using a national currency like the dollar is a nightmare to implement from a technical and operational standpoint. Well, what if we told you your game could use a digital currency that enables instant transactions, has practically zero fees, and is divisible down to units 10 million times smaller than a dollar? We're talking about Bitcoin, but supercharged through the Lightning Network. The greatest digital tool for value transfer ever created can now be used as your in-game currency. The points you collect can be transferred between different games and even out in the real world. Hold up. Wouldn't all that take forever to implement? Technically, yes. But that's what Zebedee's here for. This Zeppelin is us. Pretty cool ride, right? Anyway, in here, we've got everything you need to put Bitcoin Lightning transactions in your games. We run the nodes, take care of the code, and interact with the blockchain. On your end, it all looks like a simple online platform. You just sign up, download one of our SDKs, and connect to our APIs to set up game actions. Let's put it this way. If you wanted to spin up a virtual server, you wouldn't buy a data center. You'd just get a service like AWS or Azure. Well, this is the same thing. You can now use Bitcoin as your in-game currency with all of the benefits and none of the hassle. It's about better game monetization and less friction.
Oh. That can't be good.
How about that ride?
I don't know what's happening here, guys.
The
There we go.
And above all, opening up a world of new creative possibilities. Because when the points in your game are worth something in the real world, concepts that used to be trivial suddenly become the driving force behind total.
All right. Maybe I'll just stop it here. Were you guys able to follow along with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
You probably have the link somewhere, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So we'll post the link later as well.
Cool, cool. So that's in a nutshell is what we're trying to do, is really facilitate the integration of games with Bitcoin. And the first set of products that we released are sort of threefold, and it sort of touches on the first vertical I was talking about, which is the game developers, right? The how to facilitate their integration from the viewpoint of a game developer. So we created a developer dashboard that I'll walk you through that will, I'll go into more detail. It comes into play when you're dealing with, transaction management, game management, API keys, and all sorts of things. We created a documentation portal, that has all of the guides and tutorials you may need on how to use the dashboard itself, as well as understanding more of our services. And primarily worked on the first version of the Unity engine SDK that Chris is going to touch on, as well as the Node.js SDK for server-based, web-based games. So let me go into the developer dashboard, right? The idea with Zebedee's services is, once again, facilitate the integration. And how do we facilitate it the quickest? And it's really removing the friction needed when it comes to running all of the software and all of the servers involved with accepting, transferring, paying, and withdrawing Bitcoin from a game. You can imagine it's quite a burden to have to roll out your own payment processor if you were a simple app developer. In this, it's a similarity to it. So it's the idea with the developer dashboard is you sign up, you have a fully programmable Lightning wallet with the ability to pay out to any Lightning invoice that you may have. I mentioned here on the fourth bullet point, we of course support both 11, but we also have full native support for LNURL withdraw and pay. For those unfamiliar with it, it's sort of an UX protocol built on top of Lightning that facilitates the interaction between wallets and the services, in this case the games. This is where you would go and find individual API keys for your many games. You can have different games, you can have many wallets, and we aim to provide analytics support rather soon, because above all, the services that we provide are also aiming at bettering your game, whether that means introducing more value transfer between players, whether it's introducing new types of interactions between players, or between player and the game, or also the audience and the players and the audience and the game. We're going to touch on that a little bit later. So really the microtransaction aspect of using Satoshis in games can provide for quite a bit of new, novel concepts to be introduced. So on the right side, you see a screenshot of it. If you'd like to sign up to it, you can let us know. We're doing a slow beta rollout, really focusing on getting into the weeds with some of our customers, trying to understand their problems. If you have a game you'd like to integrate, or you want to test around and mess around with it, we'd love to let you have a space there. Similarly, we released at the same time the documentation portal. It's a really detailed API reference and documentation guide. It showcases all of the capabilities of the API, the SDKs, and essentially everything that you can do with the many entities in the Zebedee API. So hopefully I'm still logged in here. So this is a quick demo of the dashboard. Don't worry, this is a demo account. So you can all look at my many long passwords and even my 6-digit PIN. So essentially, the idea with the developer dashboard is to provide a central place for developers to go to manage their games, to look at their transaction history, to sort of understand what's happening as it relates to payments and Bitcoin inside of your game. So we have a wallet, we have our games, we have some settings, and this is the V1 of it. So I'm just going to quickly walk through it. Right now, it's our core wallet. You have the ability to charge, essentially create invoices. You can withdraw, essentially create LN URLs, and you can also pay invoices, whether it's an LN URL pay or a Bolt 11. You see all of your transactions. Everything is pretty smooth. You get even further detail about the individual transactions. We have a built-in voucher system where we are able to create endless vouchers to introduce developers or even your friends to the platform and say, hey, here's 500 sats and go wild. In the game side, we have a bunch of games, and if you click in one of the games, you see that I have some stats, some basic stats about the game. I have my transactions that, specifically to the game. We're releasing a BitPong. It's like a Pong version. We're going to put it on our website very soon. We have an API access. I'm not going to click here because it's going to show my API key. And then we also have upcoming analytics coming soon. We have a version that's already working with that. And so the idea is you get your API keys from here, you sort of manage the information, and we have lots and lots of plans for the developer dashboard. But really you want to go into the documentation portal. So this is where you're going to learn about Zebedee, you're going to learn about the many parts of the dashboard, how to fund your wallet, the wallet itself, the charges that you can create, how to create withdrawal requests, and really how to use the Zebedee services in your games. Chris is going to essentially walk through this, but we have a very in-depth Unity tutorial on how to integrate with an example game, and we're going to show that later today as well. So coming back here, the next one that I want to touch on is the Unity Sdk. And really the reason why we picked Unity is we believe that there's a really long tail of developers. There are both indie-sized game developers as well as mid-sized companies that can introduce these novel concepts into their games. And so Unity is at the moment the industry-leading engine when it comes to building games for this demographic. And so by introducing Unity support, we automatically introduce support for lots of not only environments, whether it's web, whether it's desktop, whether it's mobile, but really we get a large portion of, we get introduced to a large portion of the market. And so I'm going to let Chris take over and talk a few things about our Unity SDK, show some code, and then show some examples of some games that we've built with the services that I've just mentioned. Chris, do you want to take over?
Yeah, hey, am I coming through all right?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so thanks, Andre. So I'll just give it a quick kind of intro. Andre did it a bit, but yeah, I'm Chris, also known as Mandel. I've been making kind of Bitcoin games since 2014. My first original two games, one was like an arcade game called Saratobi, where you had to swing a monkey and it would basically throw Bitcoin at you. It was a fun way to kind of earn small Bitcoin tips. And then they also made a Pokemon Go style game called Takara, where people could kind of drop Bitcoin around the world and people could go and collect it, like a Bitcoin geocaching game. And then eventually, it kind of became quite expensive to send out all these Bitcoin tips, and the concept of micro tipping in games, it didn't really make sense on chain. So I was waiting around for Lightning to happen, and Lightning has happened now, is happening, and here we are. So now I basically just co-founded Zebedee with Andre and Simon to bring back my original games and also help other developers kind of create new types of gameplays in their own games. So as Andre said, we've been focusing on a Unity SDK, and Unity is like 95% of indie games are built with Unity. Even some professional games from larger studios are also built with Unity. It's quite a powerful tool. So I think what I was going to do first, I was going to maybe show a few of the sample games and then go into the SDK, just so going straight into code can be a little bit dry, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
So at Zebedee, we're not developing games per se ourselves. We're more developing kind of sample games to kind of help show developers what they can do and get the ball rolling. Having said that, these games will be released for people to play. So our first major game is Reiki, and Reiki is it's basically like the best way to explain it is Street Fighter with Bitcoin payments, aka player 1 punches player 2, and player 1 gets like a few cents in sats every time he punches him, and vice versa. So I've got a quick video here. I'm going to try and load in Jitsi to show you the basic idea. Share YouTube video. Can you see that?
I don't see it yet. So basically, it's like peer-to-peer skill betting against each other, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly, pretty much. So like the better fighter would win more sats. That's not the only thing we're doing. I was going to go into other things as well. Is that video not viewable? No,
it's going now. It stopped. Now it's going. They're fighting.
So that's kind of like a very kind of simple
Fight.
We really kind of like this idea of players being able to basically stream between them. So we're slowly kind of rolling that out, and the idea would be, people can play online and they can find matches with other players, and as they play, they can stream between them. Or at conferences, or at meetups, people can go up and play the game on the phone and find another player and kind of link over Bluetooth and stream between them. However, we also have another concept we're actually exploring, which is we quite like this idea of esports and the ability for the audience to interact with the game, and also for the game to interact with the audience. So, for example, the players can kind of stream money into the game, and that can have an effect on the game. It could spawn random power-ups for the players to collect. And then the game can also stream money back out to the audience. For example, if you have a sponsor, the sponsor could kind of program it so that people who are watching the game can like have sats sent to their wallet, or they could choose who they think is going to win in a fight. And the win, if they choose correctly, the game can reward them for their choices, like all sorts of possibilities. So I'm just going to try
it's kind of like the Hunger Games, where they just like have these things that are just introduced. It's like the Hunger Games, but like fans can like give their favorite person like a new hat or something. Is some of it cosmetic, or is it going to really help them win the game?
So people have said that Hunger Games. I've been meaning to watch the Hunger Games to see where this is done. But
yeah, you gotta. You'll get some ideas, I think, for what you're talking about.
It's up to the developers how they want to do it. Currently, what we're doing for André will talk on it a bit later. We're doing these online esports event called Mintgox, and we showcased this last month, and we're doing it again on May the 3rd. But at the moment, it's quite random. So we kind of don't want the person with the most amount of money to be able to kind of fix the game, as it were. So it's more like they can send some sats into the game, and that will spawn like a power up that either player could get, or for Mintgox. Oh,
that's good.
Yeah. For Mintgox, and I'll show you in a second in the video, it spawns a bomb, and the bomb just drops into the arena, and then it kind of blows up both players if they don't get out of the way. So it's kind of that.
Jeff, were you saying something?
Yeah, sorry. I think you demoed that in London at the Advancing Bitcoin conference.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
That was pretty cool. Where you had like Nicolas Dorier and what's his name? The Wasabi guy.
Adam.
Adam.
Yeah, they were fighting each other.
Yeah. Also, that was the idea. It's just much more, because kind of when people watch the game, they kind of want to, I guess by cheering, they kind of want to. The point of cheering is to kind of have an effect, motivate the player or something. So. I think kind of breaking down that kind of the fourth wall, or whatever wall it is, can help.
Yeah, there's one question
you have a video?
On YouTube from Petref. I think you can probably answer that either now or later if you're going to show it. and that is if you could show us what an in-game payment would look like, or how you actually like make the payment, the Lightning payment.
Yeah. Well, let me just show this video first, and then I'll go into that. The video is only like 30 seconds. It might be a bit jittery because I think that's how it kind of works on Hangouts. So videos a bit jittery. We just share my screen. This one. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
So this was the Mintgox event we did at end of February, was it? No. Yeah, last month. Yeah, so it was in a VR event called Ultspace VR. So people could watch this stream in VR, or they could actually just watch it from their desktop. And if you watch the fight, you can see all these messages are coming across. So players could pay to have their message shown in the game. And at the bottom right, you see this kind of gauge that's filling up. And when this gauge becomes full, a bomb drops. So there we go. And then that bomb kind of hurts the players. So it's kind of like the first implementation. So we're kind of iterating on this process. But how that works specifically for the event. So how that actually worked for the event is the stream of the fight was actually it was in a website, and the website would show a QR code. So kind of to the right of the stream, if you watched it on your computer, it had a button, send message, you type in a message, press send, it would show an invoice. Once you pay that invoice, it would be sent out. And that game would also send players money back. So if they chose the correct fighter who won, their web page would show a QR code they could scan to get a reward. But there's different ways you can do it. We're exploring lots of different ways. There's a lot of cool, interesting things coming to Lightning, such as invoiceless payments. We kind of want to make it as streamlined as possible, so you don't have to scan a QR code. You literally just like press a button and it just sends it, right, rather than having to scan a QR code. But that's kind of one of our main games, Reiki. And if you want to kind of see that in action, join the next Mintgox. We did have another game we developed, but we can't release it because it's basically Pokemon Go and Lightning, and apparently people aren't allowed to go outside anymore. So we thought we'll just kind of hold off on that one. There's a couple of more games that I'm just going to showcase. Let me share my screen again.
But
well, you could
gonna
drop
release the Pokemon Go thing later on?
Sorry?
Are you going to release it later? Jeff was asking.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was actually going to be at Bitcoin 2020. We're going to do it at the conference, and basically the idea was that people would go around and hack these AR kind of monsters who were actually like represented by sponsors. So you kind of hack them, and if you kind of hack them in the game, the sponsor sends you some money, and you have to walk around and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, it's definitely going to be released. I've made it, so just going to wait until people can go outside. So
you encourage people to stay home. If you like airdrop it on their house,
maybe we have to think about some sort of stay at home game or something.
Yeah.
I guess all games are stay at home game, really. So.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Could you maybe you could do it like an airdrop in part of a VR world?
We've got grand plans for VR.
Yeah.
I don't want to
Okay, cool.
We're still planning it out, but definitely now, like given the rise of VR and online events, it's quite easy to do. We just we can do some cool stuff with Lightning in VR. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, lots coming for VR.
Cool. I was going to just show my other game, which is my first Bitcoin game back in 2014. Let me share that screen. Cool.
Now retrofitted to use Lightning.
Yeah, well, I think I'll make it full screen. I originally made this game 2014, and at the time, I think I actually got a lot of hate on Reddit because I was spamming the blockchain, which it kind of was, to be fair. I was like just sending out like transactions that were like were like a penny or something, or less than a penny, like thousands a day. But now it makes much more. It works better on Lightning as well, which is important. So this will be playable from May the 3rd. It's on the web, and it's also it's on the mobile for web, so it actually run quite well on mobile web, and that helps us get around some of the like App Store restrictions. But you basically, it might be a bit tricky, but you swing a monkey, and then you see how far he can fly, and you collect bananas. And bananas you can use to get power-ups. The point of the game is how far you can fly. And next week we'll have a tournament. The person who flies the furthest will win a reward. But also, scattered throughout the game are these little coins. You can see one. If you can find a coin that's kind of floating in the air, you can actually claim a Bitcoin tip. So I've actually collected 2 coins already. So in this game, you would, play the game, fly through the air, and you would press to get a tip. It would show an invoice that people can scan with their Lightning wallet. If anybody has a Lightning wallet, they can probably try and scan this now. I'll give you a few seconds.
Do it quickly, otherwise someone's going to steal your funds.
Right. Yeah. So how do you stop a bunch of monkey bots, grabbing all the bananas and the little mini tips? And are you just giving the tips so people keep playing, right? Basically, to stay in the game.
Yeah. Well, so it's kind of the same model as back in 2014. I think a similar model that Bitcoin Bounce does. The idea is that the game will show ads, and the more people play, the more ad revenue is made, and people play more because they can get the tips.
Sure.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, well, a small error there. Strange.
Yeah, I tried to scan it. It didn't work.
Okay.
But the game has been around quite some time. There's a comment that MC already played it 6 years ago in 2014.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let me try again.
Yeah.
I think this tab had been open for a long time, so I think maybe the socket closed or something while switching through.
So this is just like a new kind of really lo-fi Bitcoin mining, because these little Satoshis could be worth millions in the future. So you can just all day tap on play the game.
Well, back in 2014, I had people who did that, like especially like kids in India.
Yeah, well, it's like a faucet. I mean, even older than even 2014, faucets were basically out. So it's kind of reminds me of some of the faucet sites that did creative things similar, like, some of them had puzzles or something like that. So that's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, like when I first made it, it's just a fun way to get people into Bitcoin. And I got lots of like messages from fathers and stuff who said like, it's a great way to show my kid, get them into Bitcoin. And
right. So if someone says, how do I get Bitcoin? You say, well, you go to this website and you try to get bananas and stars and coins, and then you have some. Yep,
exactly. You can also buy bananas as well. So at the moment, 1 banana is very cheap, a Satoshi. I might make that a bit more expensive.
So is that like a power up? What do I get if I can keep on flying and try to get more coins then, or what?
You basically, bananas, they let you buy these little, you can buy these power ups. So for example, like a rocket.
Oh, okay. Oh, a rocket is nice. Yeah.
Farther out.
And then I can go fire. There we go. And it's like the combination of the power-ups will make you fly further, right? So, for example, you have a banana, which makes you slide on the floor, and you have a spring, which makes you bounce, and you have a glider. So the order in which you use them has an effect on how far you can fly, So that kind of, when this game was out, like people would get like a distance of say 10,000, and they'd want to get 10,001, and just like changing the order of the power-ups they use would like give them that extra meter. I can
attest that the spring and the fighter jet, the jet are the best ones.
Okay.
Well, actually, the spring and the rocket, I think, are the best one. You have to do the spring after the rocket, because the rocket gives you very fast velocity when you go into the ground. And then if you have the spring, it'll make you bounce higher up. But if you use the spring before that, the spring kind of puts out what you put in, right? So little things like that.
That's great. So you're getting the real good strategy right now. Has anyone, this kind of game that's real simple and fun, I could see as an arcade game even. Has anyone talked to you guys about doing arcade implementations or anything like that?
Yeah, well, like we kind of had these plans for the conferences, at least, so people could go up and we make like an arcade box, and you'd have like the joysticks and everything. But arcades are kind of banned at the moment. But yeah, all platforms. Sorry, you did ask a question about bots. I just wanted to go on.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, because I guess that's going to come up again and again with all the games anyway.
Yeah, it's not a new problem to Bitcoin. Bitcoin just incentivizes it more. It's specifically a problem in high scores. Like a lot of games had this issue where people would fake their high score and get it submitted. To be honest, it's not a 100% solvable problem. Like everything's always hackable, but there are certain things that you can do in Unity to make it very, very difficult. And it's all about making it more difficult than it is to put the effort in to hack it. One simple thing you can do is you can have stuff like some sort of social login like Twitter or something. So kind of then, a bot, it's much harder for a bot to make a Twitter account. So then you can like keep, if somebody, somebody can't spawn up a bunch of players because they actually have to have a Twitter account. There's stuff you can do on the game. There are like the bot detection things that you can do. It really does depend on your gameplay. I remember Bitcoin Bounce, which is a similar type of game, and they had a very difficult bot, which actually would just kind of, it would like look at the screen and analyze the pixels and know exactly when to press stuff. It was, so I think, so you have to kind of adjust your gameplay. But hopefully there's enough kind of bot mitigation strategies in these games that will make it like somebody can't just instantly make like 1,000 requests a second, or if they make something that's unhuman, it would be detected. The game is very, very difficult to decompile. It's got like code obfuscation. Having said that, it's not a perfect way to solve it. But I think philosophically, I'm kind of leaning to the point, why do we want to discriminate against bots? I think maybe it's quite interesting.
And well, since I don't want to, too much scope creep, but since you said it, basically the model, and it might be in other games like that, the model is, okay, I'm gonna, in this one, seed it with some, Satoshis, you're incentivized to play, and for that, you have to see a few ads. So what about, there's the whole thing. If you have ads, then if I want to put ads, then I want to know who's playing. And so you have all the data collection and this kind of thing. So what are you guys, I guess that depends on if I'm building the game, that would be how I could collect it. But what about for this game and the ones you guys are building? What's your philosophy on that? And how does that work, when you're doing, this kind of Lightning stuff, because you don't have as much information? Or do you be like, oh, this Lightning address is a big spender on the Lightning Network, we want to give him this ad? Or how do you, do that?
Well, I think so. It's probably important to say that I'll probably speak as Mandeldog, not as Zebedee per se, because Zebedee, we're not actually making games for the games themselves to be profitable. But as Mandeldog might own games, I could probably answer that a bit better. Generally with, I think Jack from Bitcoin Bounce talked on this quite well. Generally, there is a little bit of a problem with kind of ads and games with Bitcoin games, crypto games, because in a way, ads need to be kind of suited towards the audience in order for the audience to be interested in them. And thus, if an audience member, a player is interested in the ad, they're more likely to click it, and that ad would actually make money. The people who play these types of games, they are quite interested in Bitcoin, but Bitcoin ads, I think, are banned on most larger ad networks. When I first had this game in 2014, the best combination I had was I actually had crypto companies sponsoring it. I think I had at one point Coinbase and Zappo and some other companies like that. And that kind of having that more kind of curated kind of ad partnership was the best combination. Having said that, for other developers, they could use something like Google Ad Network or Unity Ad Network, things like this. But then, I guess they have to kind of ask themselves, are they happy with the data collection? Or they also, they also might run into issues with, the ads not being applicable to the players.
Okay, cool.
My take on it. But then it doesn't have to be ads. I think, kind of, we have ads at the moment because that's kind of what the current scene is. But I would like to think with Lightning, we can slowly offer other types of revenue streams and monetization. You know,
Well, maybe somebody out there is building a Lightning-based ad network, but I have no idea actually.
Chris, do you want to show? Sorry, I was just going to say, do you want to show StatStacker?
I was going to, yeah.
Just on Sarutobi, what was the highest tip you ever paid out?
Oh, the highest tip.
Yeah.
Oh, probably when it had a bug in and somebody abused it and got like $1,000. Yeah.
Okay.
No, actually, I think it wasn't actually that much. I made the game change so more people could have less than one person could have a lot, if that makes sense. So I think the hardcore players who would play every day, they were earning maybe, wasn't much, maybe like $100 a month. That was like the top people who earned, but it was more to kind of an onboarding faucet rather than a way for people to earn lots of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But that $100 now might be worth like what? Maybe $700.
Okay.
800 anyway. Yeah, so I was just going to quickly go over to the other game before I go into the Unity SDK. This is a game we actually was also birthed at the Advancing Bitcoin event, where I just had an idea and thought I could quickly do it. So I did it in between the days. I've polished it up a bit since then. This is called StatStacker, and this is also going to be live for Mintgox too. And this is it's a fun way for people to get Bitcoin again. It's a faucet. But it's also something that I think makes sense in an arcade. Basically, you drop coins here, and these coins are pushed off by this rotating thing, and the coins that are pushed off, you can withdraw. I think it's called a coin pusher type game. You kind of see these at general arcades, but this one's Lightning enabled. So I'm just going to reload it because I think because this tab has been open for a long time, I just think it'll be a bit smoother if I just reload it.
Yeah, it's essentially a glorified faucet, and we give away free sats. It's pretty nice.
Yeah, so here I'm kind of dropping some coins. Maybe get some pushed off.
Is there do I get any strategy? Can I aim left or right or something?
The strategy is all on the timing when you drop it. Left or right is random at this point. I think that's how the actual game works, is you kind of when to drop it. So yeah, I've got like 3 coins and I've earned 30 sats. And this game was actually sponsored by Wasabi Wallet, so big thanks to them.
And you also rattled the table like in real life?
I've been stopped by my own bot detection. Well, not bot detection. I was playing this game, testing it, and now it said I've earned too much coin. Give me 1 second.
I mean, essentially, they would let you withdraw 30 sats there. And the idea is to have these sorts of games before the Mintgox event, which I'll talk about in a little bit, so that people can be onboarded into Bitcoin and into Lightning, not having to worry too much about if I get a Lightning wallet, what do I do now? I want to partake in this new Lightning network and this new sphere of this new environment, and especially into games. And so if we provide ways to facilitate that earning, it's an interesting way, and I think people have 700 transactions on the first Mintgox, so that's pretty nice to see. Oh, there we go. Nice, Chris.
Yeah, I think I just tested it a lot to make sure it worked, and ironically, that made me reach my limit. But yeah, and then you can also purchase more coins. I think you start off with 10 free coins, and then you can purchase more coins. And it's a very simple game, but we tried it at the Advancing Bitcoin. We just basically had this on a screen with a QR code for people to play, and people were enjoying it. Yeah, so they're kind of the two kind of simple games. Obviously, Reiki's a bit more involved game. We've got like a story mode coming. But these were all made with Unity and the SDK, and they're very simple. I think I made knocked these up in a couple of days. The Bitcoin was the easy part. The Bitcoin took me no time. The more difficult part was the graphics and the gameplay. So if anybody has any questions, please ask now, or I'm just going to jump into Unity and just show our SDK in action. Oh, good. Okay.
No, it's good. I would just like to see if it's some kind of arcade physical version of this. I don't know how you would do it, but maybe that would be kind of
we
fun.
actually did it at Advancing Bitcoin. We basically had it screen, and people would walk past, and they would just see a QR code. They scanned the QR code, and it would just drop the coin, and then they would show a QR code if they'd won anything. So yeah, that's kind of it. Once event starts starting again, we'll probably put it there. Maybe have one at was it room 77 in Berlin or something? Maybe. I think this game you have to be a little bit more careful because obviously it's technically gambling, so you'd have to make sure you're in line with regulations. But yeah, I'm just going to jump into Unity now. Yeah, so this is a little bit more technical, but I'm not going to go too in depth. I'll just showcase for any developers who are interested. Unity is quite a simple tool to use to make games. It's quite graphical, and what I've done here, I've actually downloaded a sample game from the Unity Asset Store. It's called the Unity Adventure game. It's free to download, and it's just kind of a good starting point. It's a very simple game, but I just put the SDK in this to show how you can make a paywall and how you can quickly also add a reward feature. So I'm just going to scan this QR code to play the game. It's 100 sats. So that's what my pin code is. There we go. And now the game should load. Yeah, so this is it's kind of a point-and-click adventure game. The point of the game is to get past here, but the guard won't let you. Access denied.
That's pretty cool. Could you get a sponsorship and be that company right there?
Guess so, yeah. Well, I'm quite interested in the idea, but because Lightning makes it easy for you to send money to players, which you couldn't really do before. Or you couldn't do it in a small amount. I'm kind of like the idea of all the Bitcoin companies or non-Bitcoin companies like having product placement in the game and them kind of helping fund the game, funding stats. It's kind of a way for ads to give back. Yeah, but the point of the game, I'm just going to quickly play it. It takes a second to complete. I need to be this guy here, Frank Jobsworth. So I need to exit. And this is actually a good game that you can download and use all these assets in your own game, actually, when you put the code. Yeah, so I need to just grab this coin. This game is very similar to like the old like LucasArts games, if anybody played them. And to get coffee from this robot. It took me a surprisingly long time, or a kind of shamefully long time to figure this game out, though. I've got to disturb this bird. And he knocks off the Groucho Marx glasses. And now I've got everything I need to trick the guard. So I go back to the security room. And then he should let me in. Cool. And then once I've completed it, it should trigger a reward. There we go. So if someone wants to try and scan that, that should give them 100 sats.
Quick, go.
Did you ever actually think about making an educational game about Bitcoin, sort of for noobs?
That's not a bad idea. No, I haven't thought about it myself, but yeah, I think that's a good idea actually. Oh, someone got it. Cool. Yeah, so I think that would be actually quite fun. Yeah. Well, if anybody wants to make it, they know where to go to. Zebedee.io.
Yeah. This was actually a viewer question. So RH, that was for you.
Cool. Yeah, I've got loads of I've got so many ideas for games, but games take a while to make. Yes, I'm just gonna. So that's kind of a basic paywall and a basic kind of reward scheme. So this is all pretty much done in a few lines of codes.
Can you make it a little bigger, Chris?
Yeah, hold on. So there's one script which is attached to this game object, as it's called, in Unity. And you basically here, you enter an API key, which will be revoked shortly after this. And then you also have the URL to our API. So currently we're in beta, so it's beta. I think this will change once we're in production. You'll just need to put your API key. And then we basically have a few lines of code here. Do you want to make it a bit bigger? Is it viewable?
If you can make it a bit bigger, yeah, that'd be great.
Oh, the text bigger.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Just Command plus. You can't do that.
Yeah.
Oh, this is Windows.
Oh, it's gone too big now.
Live coding, ladies and gentlemen.
Hold on, my screen's gone weird. Oh no, sorry. There we go.
That's all right. We can see if you can make it a little bit bigger, it's better, but it's not a big deal.
Yeah, I don't know if somebody's shouting at the screen now. They know it, how to do it.
Yeah. I think it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, just look closer to the screen. Yes, so basically all Unity scripts have a start function, which is called onStart when the game starts or a game object starts. And all we do here is make a new Zebedee kind of object. So at this point, it's point to say you would have downloaded the Unity SDK and just kind of installed that through, double clicking it, and that kind of dumps it into your project. And then you go here and you basically add this Zebedee client with the API key. Then next on game start, we call this pay for a game. And this creates a new charge. So a charge is basically an invoice. We call it a charge because we found invoice doesn't really make sense to non-Bitcoiners. Charge seems to be a bit more intuitive. And we're kind of trying to target, obviously we want to grab anybody who's a Bitcoiner and want to make games. But most of our kind of demographic are going to be people who are game developers who are not familiar with Bitcoin. So kind of charge seems to make sense. But that's really just an invoice. So we make an invoice, we add a description. We add an amount in Satoshi, which is the gameplay fee. So the fee was something, I think it was 100 Satoshis. And then we create a charge or create an invoice. And the result is returned in this handle invoice. We have the bulk invoice here, which is in the request. And then we use that bulk invoice, we generate a QR code image, and that's displayed on the screen. We then subscribe to the charge, the invoice kind of status. And once it's completed, we get a callback here. And anything goes wrong, we get an error here. That's basically all kind of you have to do to kind of add an invoice. It could be for a paywall, it could be for a store, kind of this bit of code. And this is all documented. I've got a video which walks through me writing this code and showing you how to make it work. And the other side of that is the withdrawal. So we have this do withdrawal function. And this do withdrawal function, this is called, you saw it in the game when I went through the gate. In another part of the code and another part of the game, there's like an event that's fired once you finish the game and kind of exit. So that event calls this function. And we make a withdraw object. We add a description. We have an amount. We call the make withdraw function. That returns here. Same as the invoice, we get that result. We make a QR code image out of it, and we subscribe to the status. If it's completed, we show like an image withdrawn, kind of a complete tick symbol, a check symbol. And if there's an error, we handle it there. So it's basically those kind of few functions there will let you basically add purchases with Lightning in your game, and also add kind of rewards or payouts. There's a few other bits of code here which are quite standard in Unity. It's just this makes the QR code image, stuff like that. So yeah, that's really all you have to do. That's all you have to do. And yeah, like I said, we've actually got an SDK. We've got the SDK and the documentation and the video tutorial, and a sample project is on our website, so you can kind of get stuck in. And we have a Discord as well. You can jump in and ask us questions if you have any issues. Yeah, so this is quite standard. We've just got the making an invoice and paying an invoice. We do have more exciting things coming to it. We have some protocols we're going to kind of roll out and try to get added to LN URL standards, such as streaming between players. You know, so instead of having to show QR code, a user could link their wallet with the game, and as they're playing the game, the wallet is like paying invoices automatically as they're just doing things. You don't have to like scan a QR code all the time. But obviously, you know, we kind of need to get a little bit more consensus on them with the wider Lightning community. However, a few of these features will probably be available to work with our own Lightning wallet we are rolling out in the coming weeks.
Is that wallet going to be custodial? Is it? Are you going to host it, or can everybody run it?
I think Andre can talk on that a little bit, but I'll just just before I hand over, the idea is that we kind of want to add a lot of cool things to Lightning in gaming. One of the bottlenecks we have at the moment is the wallets don't support what we're trying to do, right? You know, the idea of streaming payments and all this kind of stuff. So we're kind of building it first in our wallet and trying to hope that we'll suggest other wallets also incorporate it. But I'll hand over to Andre if you want to talk more about the wallet and answer your question.
I can talk about the wallet. So initially, it's going to be in a very much a custodial approach where it's a client-based for iOS and Android that gives you sort of the same feature set that you have on the developer dashboard. So it's kind of, you can open your phone and see your funds on the go. If your game is out being played by hundreds of players, you're either giving out sats or you're receiving sats or money is flowing, you can very easily open your wallet and see all that information. Any sort of protocol that Christian's talking about that we try to introduce, 100% the aim is to open source and to have it introduced. It doesn't serve us any good to create a siloed, micro space where Zebedee tools work together and no one else in the industry works with them. So it's very much something we want to push forward for community, hopefully LNURL or something of that sort. But we do have plans to open source the interface of the wallet such that you can plug in an LND backend or a BTC Pay server. It is just a little bit complicated to support both front ends and both backends. But we have a modular approach and we're gearing towards it. So hopefully the first versions, the custodial and subsequent versions, we can open source that portion of the wallet.
Yeah, we also have point to mention, the SDK also does have kind of support for BTC Pay server. So if people wanted to make invoices with BTC Pay server, they can. The approach is not to necessarily funnel people into only Zebedee services, if you will. The goal with the SDK was to provide both backends. So it technically has support for LND. We need to change some things, but it's talking to the LND inside of BTC Pay server. You can also instead just talk directly to our API. If you are more into the weeds of running your own nodes and dealing with your channels and liquidity and deploying capital, by all means, our tooling is also meant to respect that choice, and you should be able to use them. But it's a step-by-step. We can't necessarily do it all at once. I think it also depends on the game, right? So if you have like a small game, then maybe running your own node's fine. But as your game scales, it's probably unlikely that you can scale your own Lightning infrastructure and full node infrastructure. So we kind of offer, to kind of manage that for players if they use our services. They won't have to worry about kind of maintaining load balance servers and all this kind of stuff, which is quite difficult to do, I think, with Bitcoin and Lightning generally.
Yeah, thanks. I think that answers the questions about custodial wallets and all that in depth. Thank you.
Great. So if you can all see my screen, I'm going to go back here. Unless we have other questions on the SDK, Christian did a great job going through it. Unity Sdk. There are lots of features coming in. We have some VR stuff that we're working on that I think is really exciting. We have some other SDKs in the works as well. I did want to point out, if your game is web-based or if it has any sort of server, we are rolling out additional SDKs on top of the Node.js SDK. So that's also out, and you can sort of tinker with that. Now, switching gears a little bit, I'm going to talk about Mintgox. So Mintgox, actually, let me backtrack. The idea for the next couple of months for the Zebedee team was to showcase a lot of this that we've been building in a more in-person manner, right? Through lots of conferences, lots of workshops, lots of activities that allowed us to interact with game developers. But unfortunately, we're unable to do that at this point. And so given all the cancellations and given all the postponings of all major events, we turned to the online world, right? And Bitcoin and Lightning is essentially prone for that. It's already online. It's internet native. So we really found a way to hone into that Lightning and global aspect of Lightning and Bitcoin, and also plug in games, which are in its essence also very internet native. You have multiplayer games for years and years now. Esports is a massive industry in and of itself. So from that was birthed Magic Internet Gathering. So Mintgox is a play on the Mt. Gox, the infamous first Bitcoin exchange. And in this case, it's Mint for Magic Internet Gathering. And so what is Mintgox, right? You can read in here, but the idea is, can we provide a space where game developers and other developers as well are able to showcase, interact with an audience of users or players through the use of micropayments or microtransactions or microtransactions in other environments, right? You can imagine microtransactions in the VR space, in a live stream space, even on an esports space. So what we created, we got together with a few other folks and created the Mintgox project. And in and of itself, it's really three parts. It's always online, but it's really distributed media. We have VR portions. We have everything is live streamed over Mixer. We have games which are web apps or mobile apps. We have questions and things being said on Twitter. We have a full Discord group which we provide supports and help and also allow you to earn some Satoshis to play the games. This happens once a month. We've had the first one on March 29th, correct? And now we're having the next one next Sunday, which comes up to May 3rd. And primarily, I've mentioned it before, but the initial focus is going to be on games. The idea is games is already an internet native world. It's already an audience that's familiar with coins and gold and points, right? So it's really prone for that audience. And I think there's lots of new types of interactions that we can create from that. So I've already gone through this, but the idea is to have things like game developer interviews, gaming showcases. So for game developers, one of the toughest things is to get people to play your game. And how do you do that? You usually go to conferences and you usually showcase your game in big screens, or you go to workshops or things like that to showcase it. And it's very tough on a world where you can't perform those sort of events. You need a place to showcase your game to get, whether it's just feedback or even to showcase a very polished, finished game that you want to move forward. So if we can do these showcases, we can do these interviews. We have had Bitcoin and Lightning talks. The first one, we had a talk with a set of folks I'm going to talk about in a second, which I think was really great. We have done a few tournaments as well, which give this notion of a competition, this notion of a group, of a belonging. And then we do also a lot of Sats giveaways to introduce lots of people in the spectrums of whether the gaming industry and of the Bitcoin industry who are trying to enter those industries. Here's some Sats, let's get started. Let's get you started moving in this new Satoshi-enabled world. So the first one was called Virtual Fighting Championship. We had a website up for roughly 2 weeks. I do want to point out the Mintgox one was sort of planned and managed and created all in 2 weeks and ran in 2 weeks. So we imagine that we're really hoping, and also we've made many moves to make this subsequent event and every subsequent event exponentially better. So the first one is Virtual Fighting Championship, happened on March 29th, and we have a set of things. The entire event was in VR in the sense that you could put on a headset and you could sit in a VR theater and you could see it on a big screen alongside other gamers and Bitcoiners and just enthusiasts of the event. But we had a lot of things happen. Everything was live streamed as well, so you could be from the comfort of your house and your computer, and you could participate. But we also had lots of tangential things. So on the top right, you already saw SatStacker that was running the entire day. Anyone could come in and empty our wallets because it's really a glorified faucet. We had lots of people trying to empty our wallets there. We had the Bitcoin Bounce tournament, which is a game by Thunder Games. Jack is one of the organizers of Mintgox as well. He's helping us find games and have tournaments and all sorts of things. So for that one, Jack gave out, I believe, over 1 million sats, and he had a running tournament as well, similar to SatStacker. It was happening sort of tangentially to the event itself, but I know that it was a blast and hundreds of people played it. On the bottom right, we had the VR chat. Like I mentioned, we had Rod Rudy from BTC Media and Bitcoin Magazine come and talk to us. We had both Simon and Chris from the Zebedee team. We had Jack from the Thunder Games team, and we had Desiree from Lightning Labs. And we had a discussion in the VR environment about Lightning and gaming. How does it fit? How does it work? What are the examples we have? What do we envision in the future? So that was great. And then the main part of the event was the Reiki tournament, which was the videos that you guys saw early on, which is primarily the esports, where we had celebrity players. There was a Lightning Labs person, a Thunder Games person, a Zebedee person, and a Bitcoin Magazine person. And there were two semifinals and then a final. And as Chris explained, you can make payments through a web app that was sort of coupled with the Mixer stream for those watching online. And you could pay those invoices and have your message appear in the game, as well as power up that bomb that sort of changed the circumstances of the game. I think that is a great showcase of what I was talking about earlier, which is that breaking that barrier between the audience and the game. You're no longer just a passive participant in this interaction. You're now an active participant. You very much have the capabilities to interact with the game, interact with the players, and really change the dynamics of how things are working. And this is entirely up to the game developers to create these interactions. Reiki is just something that we've put together. So overall, given all that I've said, it was a great success. On the right side, you see some shots of the VR space during the panel. You also see some of the marketing material we put together. But overall, there was roughly 90 to 100 people participating. We had 32 VR attendees. We had roughly 50 people in the stream. And we had around 800 to 900 transactions in Lightning on the SatStacker and the Reiki games, which are the ones that Zebedee controls, right? So we have some stats that we're able to produce. I'm sure Bitcoin Bounce had many other transactions that he runs his own system, but we had 114 players. And so the feedback so far has been tremendous and very positive overall. The famous, Dr. Watt won the Bitcoin Bounce tournament, and he won 500,000 sats. We got some media coverage and Decrypt Media, as well as, I mentioned this already, but the global nature of Bitcoin. It's tough to say that me as a game developer, or even Chris as a game developer, probably would be able to get his game out into the hands of people in France and in Turkey, and even have money come in and out of your game. And so it's very interesting to see that global aspect of it. And I think it's very honestly, it just gives you a good sentiment that there are lots and lots of people out there really interested in this. And I think we're trying to put forward an event, a series of events that are able to showcase games in a more favorable light in that sense. And so Mintgox 2 is coming up next Sunday. This one is called Virtual Retro Gaming Arcade. We're trying to have all of them have individual sort of themes and individual websites and things like that. So you can head over to mintgox.com and you will see the agenda. You see what we're doing. But we're doing lots of things. We are going to have the Satoshi Games folks, Carlos and Federico, come over and work on an agar tournament. If you've never played agar, it's sort of a you can imagine it being sort of a Pac-Man where you're eating your other opponents. So we're going to have, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 people playing that. And the winners are going to get some Satoshis. We're going to have them also demo their latest version of Light Knight. I know that also just got released in an alpha, but I believe they have some other stuff they want to showcase. Saratobi, Chris did a quick demo of it. So we're going to have a tournament of that to see how many people actually get the most number of bananas. And they'll win some Satoshis based on that. On the top right, you see the VR space. We're going to have everything is still going to be in VR, and we're going to have a talk about future Lightning concepts in a gaming environment. So really things to look forward in the future, things that we're thinking long term, and that's going to be more of a fireside discussion between Chris Mendelduck here as well as Constantine. So Constantine is the one that the game developer running the Bitcoin Bounty Hunt game. I don't know if you guys have seen that before. And he is sort of, really bringing the polished games into the space. I believe, I don't want to hint too much, but Mintgox 3 is in June is likely to have a Bitcoin Bounty Hunt tournament where lots of people can play and also earn Satoshi. So we hope to be leading that pack as well with Constantine. We will also be having a Reiki tournament, which I'll touch on in a second. I believe I already went through this, but this is what the agenda is for Mintgox 2. And I did want to point out the VR networking portion there. It's as we've been unable to go to conferences and network. Really, a lot of conferences. The real point is not just the talks that are being demoed and the products being demoed, but it's really getting in, face to face with people, getting in touch with people, whether it's on the development side or just you want to talk to some core devs or you want to do more business related networking. And I think the VR space is slowly giving a new door that's opening for that to happen. We saw in the first Mintgox, some people hung around the VR space for longer and they talked with each other and people asked questions to the fighters. And so the idea is to, at the end of the event, to really come together and be friendly in a VR environment. With that said, Mintgox 2 is the second version, and like I mentioned, it's going to be exponentially better than the first, and Mintgox 3 will also follow suit. We imagine that as we progress, the tools and the games and even the audience will not only grow, but also gain in all aspects, if I had to say. The first big piece here is we're now getting sponsors. So Bitstamp is going to be the first official sponsor of Mintgox. So they're sponsoring some of the stats we're giving out to the audience. And for Mintgox 2, we have upwards of 3 or 4 million sats being given out in a period of roughly 2.5 hours. So if you want to earn some sats, if you want to play some games, you should definitely come through. And what's interesting is for the Mintgox 2 event, given that Bitstamp is one of the sponsors, they are actually participating as one of the fighters in the Reiki fight. So it could be that Bitstamp actually wins the whole tournament and wins some money back. But I think that's just a cool thing that we're trying to push forward. I did also want to mention that we really strive to bring in the audience into the gameplay and into the event itself. So for the Mintgox 2 fighting of Reiki, we are also bringing the winner of the Bitcoin Bounce tournament of the first Mintgox as a fighter. So Dr. Watt is going to be a fighter in Mintgox 2, and we hope that he wins consecutively. That would be an interesting turn of events. So yeah, do we have any questions on Mintgox specifically? I brushed through it. Maybe I did it rather quickly.
Maybe not. Yeah, in some sense, there's a question What is the main missing puzzle piece to make gaming an easy onboarding method for Bitcoin? I guess that also plays a bit into the whole idea of Mintgox.
Right. Yeah, I think
just one, or is it like a bunch of pieces?
Sure, I can speak about the general complications of running and the Mintgox event specifically, and then touch on the games. I think we're trying to do lots of things at once, right? We're trying to have a presence in a VR environment. We're trying to have a presence on a live stream environment, and also bring in, do outreach to game developers to bring them into the event to showcase their games and to give talks. I think the biggest part that we've seen that can be a hindrance to the events are internet related. I know everyone is always online, but I think specifically now, everyone is online at all times, and we definitely dealt with some lag and some issues there on the first event. Apart from that, I think from an organizational and from a audience participation standpoint, it worked really well. We deem it a very big success for Mintgox 1. As it relates to Lightning and Bitcoin, I think the missing puzzle is actually a lot of pieces. I think Chris touched on it a little bit, but the first bit I would say is the notion of walled gardens. I think mobile games are one of the largest shares of the market right now, and you sort of have to play by the rules of Apple and Google. And if they happen to dislike your approach to introducing Bitcoin into your mobile game, it can be the reason why they don't allow your game to be sold or downloaded from the app stores. So that's definitely one hindrance that we've seen. It's by no means impossible. We have tried it multiple times. We have games in the App Store, and we know of other games in the App Store. Most recently, the Bitcoin Bounce example that I just talked about in Mintgox 1, that is in both Google Play Store and iOS App Store. I think that's one piece of the puzzle. I think the second piece is introducing the new types of interactions. I think I like to say that Bitcoin enables for your Bitcoin integration to really work. In my opinion, it needs to be something that couldn't be done previously. So, for example, having a very simple in-app purchase done with a credit card or done with Bitcoin, is it better? It may be, a little bit better or a little bit worse, but it's not exponentially better. It's not really that 10x improvement that I think people are really looking forward to. I think new types of interactions are going to arise that we don't yet even know of or have thought of. So things like player-to-player interactions, once we enable the streaming of Satoshis from a player to another player, I think that will open lots of doors. And it's really an experimentation phase now. I think lots of people are trying different things in relation to ads, right? We have Bitcoin Bounce has some ads, and some of the rewards from those ads are given out to the players. I know Bitcoin Bounty Hunt has ads in a very similar approach where sponsors get to pay in to fund a pot of the game, and their logos appear in the walls of the game. We also have the very simple pay to play approach. So it's really about coming up with the correct interactions that will drive the users to come back, that will increase your game revenue. And then third, I think it's not just necessarily the technology adoption by itself, but it's really the circle economy that needs to really be created around Bitcoin. I think Lightning really provides the ability to monetize individual units of anything, whether it's of time, of a punch, right, in a game, or whatever it is. You can monetize essentially every web view, a web page, for example. But it's still not there where lots of people are getting paid in Bitcoin, and because of that, it's tough to say that I'm going to go to Coinbase or however you buy your Bitcoin Bitstamp, and I'm going to send those Bitcoins that I just bought to my Lightning wallet, and then I'm going to use that. So really, it has to be much more frictionless. We are working towards that. Our mobile wallets will have some tools that will provide that. For both the developer on the web dashboard as well as the player on the mobile wallet. So we hope to streamline that friction. But I believe it's a no-brainer to think that once that friction is not there, once it's very seamless to go from playing to earning to paying to winning, Bitcoin is just omnipresent, if you will. It's just part of the internet, and if you can transact it as fast as we've seen with Lightning, instantaneously and almost feeless, I think it's a no-brainer to say that games will have support for it in the coming weeks, months, years. I don't know if Chris has any thoughts on that, but that would be my explanation of the puzzles missing.
Yeah, I have a quick thought. Kind of being in this kind of gaming Bitcoin space since like 2014, I kind of felt that there was a lot of energy building games on Bitcoin, and it was I think it was working in the early days. And then what kind of happened? I think the development environment didn't really feel it. It was more difficult on Bitcoin because of the scaling issues, and then just generally kind of the people weren't so supportive of people building their games on the first layer, right, on chain. So all that kind of energy went over to other blockchains, namely beginning with an E. And then everybody kind of decided to do something super complicated. Originally, I think you have to kind of do some of the simple stuff first, just a game that pays you some real money tips, but everybody went over to the more developer-friendly place, and let's make these super complicated games that give people my special ERC something which people don't want because it's worth nothing because I just made it. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I think there's definitely a place for it, but I just think it was kind of developers overcomplicated stuff, and I think that kind of didn't help. So I kind of think just going back to basics and now building these kind of these games on a scalable Bitcoin solution, I think shows a lot of promise. Like I think Lightning Koala actually said it quite well. I heard him in an interview. He said, let's get one token working first, kind of Bitcoin, and see if we can make games like that. That's kind of how I see it.
That's interesting. I wanted to also just, in case you didn't know, Mintgox stands for Magic the Gathering Online Exchange.
Yeah.
And they didn't even have Bitcoin, but then they did have Bitcoin where you could buy cards or something. So Bitcoin and gaming and Bitcoin and collectibles has a long history, one way or another. So it's really interesting that you come like full circle, and then you call your event Mintgox, which is cool. And I remember exactly what you were talking about, Chris, that there were some games and there was some on-chain thing, and then a lot of people moved, some of the energy, like you said, moved. And that's like similar with the whole Rare Pepe and all that kind of stuff too. Basically, it's a similar thing. But you know what? It didn't really help there's two things. That other chain also has trouble with scaling. And from my point of view of looking at sports betting or gambling and this more gaming aspect, there's not a lot that has really caught on that much, really, because they haven't got the basics right, like you were saying. You know what I mean? You still, I don't know where I can do a really good peer-to-peer on-chain betting thing on that other chain, and I also don't know where I can do it on Bitcoin right now, actually, either. If I wanted to bet on this game, or if I wanted to challenge someone like an esports, there have been several projects with tokens or whatever, but that makes the friction even bigger, harder to use. I forgot the names of them, but there were some trying to do kind of the peer-to-peer skill challenge, basically for your esports, but they had tokens and all this other stuff, and it's really kind of complicated. And I don't think they have any real big volume or anything. So I still think there's a good chance for Bitcoin to take that kind of market some and have some kind of impact.
Have it with technology that when it comes out, the most creative people tend to kind of make stuff that's a little bit ahead of its time, and it doesn't really work on the first wave. Then we kind of go back to basics, and the second wave it kind of works. So I think Blockbuster tried to make Netflix in 1990 whatever, right? It didn't really work, but I think can be said of a lot of more complex usage of Bitcoin and blockchains in games. It's cool, but it needs to be super simple and super smooth for it to catch on to normal people. And the more complicated your kind of integration is, the more difficult it is to achieve that.
I think if I could just add, I think to add to that, the friction aspect is really important. I think if I need to buy ETH in an exchange to then send to my MetaMask to then be able to access a specific service or game, that feels like a large burden for a person who's just beginning to be introduced into this entire universe. So, by introducing these, I think in Zebedee we're very pro NFTs. I think there's definitely a place for non-fungible tokens that represent digital things. I think that idea that whole scenario and industry needs to be thought out a little more, but we're definitely behind that in the coming years. I think it's just inevitable for that to happen. But at the same time, if you introduce too many steps into something, it's just so much easier to let go. We can see that from your website. People usually stay on your website for mere seconds, to even the resumes. They get seen by like 2 seconds and they're dropped.
Yeah.
It needs to be familiar. It needs to be easy. It needs to be frictionless. And if we do the basics first, I think we have a better chance at introducing them slowly. And then once again, we're going to see a game that's going to disrupt the industry, and it has a different type of Bitcoin integration, and that will, sort of extrapolate and sort of make an industry for it. So I think it's step by step, but we can't ask of our users, of our players, to learn an entire set of tools just to play a very simple game. It has to be flawless. It has to be simple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think MetaMask is good for onboarding crypto freaks that are already into crypto, but not for outsiders. Jeff?
I was going to say that that's almost like a good last word, if you will.
Yeah.
There are there are more questions that go a bit more into detail, and I think it's a good time to maybe take them into like the after show hangout and talk to a couple of people that deserve some questions on this call. But unless you have like something you want to ask on the live stream or still haven't talked about.
No, not from our side. We covered a lot. I just noticed we're an hour and a half into it, so yeah, let's go into the.
And I think it's great to like leave it at a more general outlook and have some of the questions that are still up answered in a couple of minutes. I would like to thank you for coming. Thank you for being on the show. Next week, we're going to have Mintgox, the online event, which I'm also particularly excited about. But we also have another episode of Potzblitz, and next week we'll have Christian Decker from Blockstream, and he's going to talk about backups of so it's going to be a bit more developer focused, I think. And co-host will be Stefan Livera, the famous podcaster from Australia. So it's going to be another great episode. Looking forward to that. So thank you, André and Christian from Zebedee. I hope I got it right this time. For coming, and thank you, Theo, for co-hosting this episode. If you liked it, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and tune in next Sunday at 8 again.
Awesome.
See you around.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are we all fair?